So what happened? You went to therapy because something felt wrong. Am I right? You couldn't sleep. You're anxious all the time. You'd lost interest in things that you used to love. You were exhausted in a way that didn't make sense given your life on paper. And the therapist listened. They nodded. They gave you a diagnosis: anxiety, depression, maybe PTSD, maybe a personality disorder. They may have referred you for medication. They gave you coping skills. They taught you to challenge your thoughts, breathe through the panic, journal about your feelings. But none of it worked. Or, okay, maybe some of it worked a little, just enough to keep you functional. But the thing underneath never shifted, because here's what most people are not asking you: what is happening in your relationships? Not how do you feel about your relationship? Not are you satisfied in your marriage? Like literally, what actually is happening? What was Tuesday night like? What did you do? What happens when there's a disagreement? What happens when you say no? What happens when you succeed at something and you get an award? And what happens when you cry? If any of those questions just made your stomach like tighten, then stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through might reframe everything that you've believed about yourself for many years. So, in my work, both as a therapist and as a forensic mental health evaluator, I've sat across from a couple hundred people who came in with a diagnosis of anxiety, depression, bipolar 2, borderline personality disorder, ADHD, complex PTSD. And when we started to look at what was actually happening in their lives, something became very clear. The diagnosis wasn't exactly wrong. The symptoms were real. The suffering was real, but the diagnosis was describing the person's response to something. It wasn't describing the actual person. So maybe I could say that a different way. If you put a healthy nervous system in an environment of chronic unpredictability, criticism, control, and emotional withdrawal, that nervous system will start to produce symptoms: anxiety, hypervigilance, sleep disruption, emotional dysregulation, difficulty concentrating, loss of identity, despair. Those symptoms are not a malfunction. Those symptoms are a correct response to an unsafe environment. The problem, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault, but it is a flaw. And I think it's very important that we point out the flaw, because that's the only thing that's going to make it change. It's the only thing that's going to make a difference. The mental health system is not trained to see the things that I've just described. Most clinicians are trained to assess the individual person who is sitting in front of them. They are looking at symptoms, your history, your thought patterns, your coping skills. What they are typically not trained to assess is the relational system you are living inside of. They're not asking, is this person in a relationship with somebody who is coercively controlling them? Is this person being financially controlled? Is this person experiencing psychological abuse that leaves absolutely no visible marks? They're not asking because most of them were never taught to ask. So coercive control is a pattern of behavior that seeks to dominate, isolate, and regulate another person. It includes monitoring your movements, controlling your finances, dictating what you wear, who you see, how you spend your time. It can include subtle put downs like backhanded comments that you can never really pin down. It can include explosive anger that comes out of nowhere, or the silent treatment that lasts for days. It can include sexual coercion, or threats to leave or to take the kids or to ruin your reputation or to even hurt themselves should you choose to leave. And here's what makes that invisible to most clinicians. The person doing those things often presents beautifully. I have even heard it from attorneys that I have worked with, is the problem that we are up against here is that this person is going to be able to present in court wonderfully. And that is a big part of the problem. They're calm, they're articulate, they're successful. They might even come to couples therapy and say all of the right things. Meanwhile, you, the person who is living inside of this, you look like you are actually the problem. You're emotional, you're reactive, you're anxious, you're not sleeping, you're gaining or losing weight, you're struggling at work, you've lost touch with friends. And when a clinician only sees you and only sees your symptoms, the diagnosis lands on you. So let's just walk through the most common diagnoses that I do see when somebody new comes in. So the first one, probably the one that I see most often, is generalized anxiety disorder. Yes, the person is anxious. Yes, you're anxious because you're living in a chronic state of threat. Monitoring your nervous system has learned that anything can become a problem at any moment. A look, a tone, a meal that's not right, a bill that came late, a distracted moment when they wanted attention, all of that. Your body is not broken. It's doing exactly what bodies do when they're not safe. The next one is major depressive disorder. And yeah, you probably are depressed. You've lost access to yourself. The things that you used to enjoy, yeah, they probably do feel flat because all of your emotional energy is being entirely consumed by managing another person's mood, needs, and reactions. You're not depressed because of some chemical imbalance. You're depressed because you have been systematically erased. The next one is bipolar 2. This one I see a lot, and I'm seeing it increasingly more often, especially in women. You have mood swings, you have periods of high energy followed by crashes, you're emotionally volatile, but here's what is actually happening. Your moods are tracking his mood. The highs happen when things are good, when he's attentive, when the abuse cycle is in the honeymoon phase. The crashes happen when the devaluation begins again. You're not cycling, you're responding. And then borderline personality disorder. This one's starting to make a comeback too, unfortunately. And this is perhaps the most painful misdiagnosis because it carries so much stigma. You fear abandonment, you fear unstable relationships, your emotions are intense, you may have engaged in self-harm, your sense of self is unclear, but every single one of those symptoms can also be the result of prolonged relational trauma, especially when the person you love is intermittently available, unpredictably cruel, and occasionally wonderful. You didn't develop a personality disorder, you developed a survival response to a disordered relationship. And then ADHD. You can't focus, you forget things, you're disorganized, you start things, you probably have 20 things started, you can't finish them, but your brain isn't broken. Your cognitive resources are being consumed by hypervigilance. You're trying to function while simultaneously running a background program that is monitoring for threats all the time and there is absolutely no bandwidth left. And then we have complex PTSD. This one actually feels closer to the truth than any of the other ones. And it's still a little incomplete if no one names the sources. Yes, you have complex trauma, but the trauma isn't just from your childhood. The trauma is ongoing. It's happening in your home. It is happening with the person who says they love you. And here's why getting this wrong is so dangerous. When you receive a diagnosis, it locates the problem inside of you, but then you start to believe that you are the problem. So what do? You work on yourself, you take the medication, you do the therapy, you read the books, you try so hard to be less anxious, less sensitive, less reactive, less much, like you're just trying to pull all the things together. And the whole time, the environment that is producing the symptoms remains unexamined. Worse, the diagnosis becomes a tool in the relationship. They can say, you're the one with the mental illness. You're the one who's unstable. You're the one who needs help. And can you really argue it? Because you do have the diagnosis. I have sat in couples therapy, in forensic evaluations, in all kinds of situations where an abusive partner used their spouse's psychiatric history as evidence of their instability. A psychiatric history that the abusive partner created the conditions for. And that's how that works. And it is so unfortunate. So what do? In the years and years that I have been doing this work, one of the things that I see is when the relationship with your partner is unsafe, it corrupts everything else. Your relationship with yourself, you stop trusting your own perceptions, you lose access to your needs, to your preferences, to your identity. Your relationship with your body, you become disconnected, you might stop eating. Well, you're not feeling at home inside your own skin. Your relationship with money changes. They might be controlling it directly, or the chaos may have actually left you in a situation where you're unable to financially function. Then the impact that it has on your relationship with work, your performance suffers, your confidence starts to disappear, your relationship with your family and friends may be gone. Most of the time you end up isolated. You've withdrawn at some point and you've lost yourself. Your relationship with your sense of meaning, your spirituality, your connection to something larger, it's probably gone completely dark. But it's not 7 separate issues. It's not 7 separate problems. This is one relationship, the one with your partner, sending shockwaves through every other area of your life. And when you walk into that therapist's office presenting with anxiety or depression, nobody sees the earthquake. Nobody sees that shake that's happening from the situations that you're actually living with at home. They just see the damage. So here's what I want to hold for you. Your symptoms, they do make sense, but you're not broken, you're not crazy, and you're not the problem. You are a person with a functioning nervous system that is responding correctly to a threatening environment. The diagnosis may be technically accurate. You may meet the criteria for anxiety or depression or PTSD, but the diagnosis without the context is incomplete. And an incomplete diagnosis will lead to incomplete treatment. You cannot medicate or therapy your way out of abusive relationships. You can only manage the symptoms while the source continues to produce them. So, and really important, like naming this, it's not about blaming your partner or avoiding personal responsibility or positioning yourself as a victim forever. Naming this is about telling the truth. And the truth is the starting point for everything else. So if you recognized yourself in any of the things that I just described, if something inside of you said, yep, that's what I've been experiencing. Yep, that's what's been happening. I want you to know that you are not alone in this and you are not crazy for not having seen it sooner. The patterns are designed to be invisible. That's the only way they work. They are designed to make you feel like you are the problem. But here you are, still listening. And something inside of you is finally starting to name what it has known for a really long time. So if you want to understand your patterns more deeply, how your intimate relationship has shaped your relationship with yourself, with your body, with money, with everyone and everything around you, that's exactly the work that I do. And that's exactly what I'm going to be publishing on this channel. You don't have to figure it out alone, and you don't have to keep carrying a diagnosis that doesn't tell the whole story. So if you want to learn more, then here's what you need to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications so that you know when a new video is released. And if you've got people in your circle who would also benefit from this, then please share the video with them. I would greatly appreciate that. And it helps me to feel a little more inspired about continuing to make content. So I wish you the best. Stay with me. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.